Hello y'all and welcome back. In the previous modules we have been looking at ancient philosophy, and we do this to introduce the foundations of philosophy as a discipline, to present some of the most important thinkers in the history of philosophy, but we also do it to frame and present ethics, a subfield of philosophy that explores moral right and wrong and the question of what a good human being is and how you become one. In this module and in the subsequent modules we'll be looking at two other subfields of philosophy, the main other two subfields, metaphysics and epistemology. And I'll be explaining what those disciplines are and the main questions in them in some detail going forward. But right now I just wanted to give a brief historical background to these two disciplines. So we've been looking at the Hellenistic period. I say the Hellenistic period, Stoics, Skeptics, and Epicureans, ends effectively, though not philosophically, but kind of historically in 31 BC with the accession of power of Octavian, who shortly thereafter becomes Caesar Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The second Roman emperor after Caesar Augustus lives a very long life, has a very successful career, and dies, is Tiberius. And Tiberius is Caesar's stepson, and he is not Caesar's first choice, or second, or third, or fourth, or fifth choice to succeed him as emperor, because Caesar wants a biological heir. But Tiberius's mom, Livia, Caesar Augustus's third wife, is determined that Tiberius will be the heir, and indeed he is, by her machinations, no doubt. And he's aware that he's not only not his dad's first choice, but also that he's not going to measure up to his stepdad in terms of charisma, political success. So he's sullen, he's morose, he's withdrawn. He doesn't become emperor until the age of 55. He's not bad as an emperor, but he's never mentioned the kind of list of top 5 or top 10 emperors when such lists are made. And he is generally unpopular. He's called the most morose of men by Pliny the Elder. And he would sort of fade into obscurity were it not for the fact that during his approximately 20-year reign, something happens which has a legitimate claim, I think, at least in the conversation, to being the most significant single event in the history of human civilization. So in the small Roman backwater of Judea, this Jewish rabbi is making waves. He claims to be the Jewish Messiah, long foretold by different Jewish prophets, and at least according to the verbal reports, he's backing this up by performing lots of miracles, healing the sick, raising the dead, casting out demons. This greatly concerns the local Jewish leaders. The fact that the Jewish leaders are kind of upset about this is not a big deal to the Romans, but this guy becomes such a troublemaker that the Romans, to preserve the peace, the Pax Romana, decide to just have him killed, hoping the problem will go away. It does not. It gets worse. His followers claim that he has come back from the dead, and the people following this now apparently resurrected Jewish rabbi grow and grow, and the ranks of these people who are called Christians grow until finally in 313, in the Edict of Milan, Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire itself. It takes over. And with the rise of Christianity, the face of philosophy changes somewhat, because you have rising to prominence questions which, in philosophy as a discipline, with Christianity, questions which were not really on the radar of the ancient philosophers, or at least if they were on the radar of the ancient philosophers, were not on the radar nearly as prominently as they are. For instance, the problem of evil. And you're perhaps familiar with this, but the very basic version of the problem goes, God is all good. He's a good God. He knows everything. He's all-powerful. So why is there so much evil, so much horrible suffering in the world? If God's good, he hates it. If he knows about it, he's aware of it. And if he's all-powerful, omnipotent, he could stop it. So why is there all this evil? This is not a problem, you see, for ancient philosophers. At least for the kind of ordinary Greek who believes in like Zeus, Hera, Athena, Aphrodite. The gods are not morally perfect at all. In fact, they're doing a lot of the evil, right? They're cheating on their divine spouses, they're lying, they're conniving, they're killing, they're battling. So the fact that there's evil is not philosophically an issue. It's also not an issue for the philosophers' gods. It's not an issue for Aristotle's God. Aristotle's God, described in Metaphysics Lambda, is no doubt perfect, but has nothing to do with this messy human world. In fact, Aristotle's God, we have no reason to think Aristotle's God even knows about what's going on this earth. Aristotle argues that he only thinks about perfect things, namely himself. Plato talks a little bit about God, develops something of a doctrine of God, but Plato, in true Platonic fashion, keeps all of the things that he says at arm's length through his dialogue or dialogues. The Timaeus primarily is the one where he discusses God. So he doesn't really have a doctrine of God as such either, and in his limited discussions of God, the problem of evil doesn't arise. So that's one, we're going to address that down the road. Another question that does not arise for the ancient philosophers before Christianity, but is very prominent for Christian and theistic philosophers, is this. So God is all-knowing, and of the things that God knows, one of those things is the future. So I'll ask you right now, supposing that you met God face to face, you say, well, I don't believe in God. Humor me here, right? This is, in that case, it's like meeting, Batman or something for you. If you believe in God, imagine you're meeting him face to face. If you don't believe in God, imagine you're meeting him face to face. And if you can ask him one question about the future, what would it be? So it might be a question about your kids, if you have kids. It might be a question about your own romantic future. Who am I going to meet? Am I going to meet anyone? Who am I going to marry? Your job, whatever. What would that question be? Now, according to classic theistic doctrine, God knows the answer to that question, because God knows everything. So God knows the future. But a problem arises here about human freedom. You see, to know something, we use this word in the same way roughly as philosophers. It means that that knowledge is some way fixed and certain. Okay, so as I record this, it's 2024, it's July. We don't know who's going to win the presidential election. But I just don't know this, right? It hasn't happened yet. Okay. But I do know some things, like it is daytime now. I'm sitting in my office. I have hands, etc., right? You say, well, Herrick, those things that you know are obvious. Yeah, there's no question about them. They're fixed. So if God knows the future in the way that I'm using that word know, the same way that I know I have hands, then it's fixed. So he's going to give you the answer to that question you're asking in this same fixed way. But if it is fixed, then there's no two ways about it. Yeah? God says, you're going to marry Steve. I don't know if you've got your eye on someone named Steve. You say, well, I don't have to. I could marry Greg. Greg fancies me. Well, not if God knows you're going to marry Steve. You don't have a choice about it, right? It's fixed. You're there standing at the altar with Steve. And this is what is known as the problem of divine foreknowledge and human freedom. If God already knows everything you're going to do, how can you be said to do it freely? And we want to preserve, at least initially, the idea that we are free for a number of reasons. At least seems like we're free. Reason would suggest that we're free. Our experience suggests that we're free. So how can we be said to do things freely if God already knows what you're going to do? This is the problem of divine foreknowledge and human freedom. It is one of the philosophical issues that arise with the rise of Christianity in the history of philosophy, and we will explore the answer to it in the next video. Thanks.